Test one, one. Test one, 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 one. Test one, one, one.
I gave him 2 dinner.
Oh.
She was looking around, running around.
few words before you?
Yeah, of course. You want to sit up here with me? And then,
Okay.
yeah, we'll sit in the middle
Thank
seat.
I just want to show Gina where everything is. You have your reading, right?
Yep.
Okay, so you just follow along. Put it there. Make sure you use the mic. Rena is very soft-spoken.
I'll make sure the mic is near you.
Okay?
Did you find the bathroom?
What? Yes, I did. Thank you. I'm
Okay,
sorry about
so
that.
just put it like there. Use the mic nice and clear. Pretend you're in class. All right, sweetie?
Okay.
Thank you.
Are we sitting on that side or?
Yeah, you can sit up there on those
Okay.
red chairs. Okay, we're going to start.
Javi?
Is there anything special you do before you say the reading?
No, just read it.
Okay.
You're going to use that one.
Okay.
So when it's time, this will be sitting over there. She can read from over there?
Okay.
These people have homes to go to. Good evening, everyone. My name is Joseph Kelly. I'm the director of the Center for the Study of Jewish, Christian, Muslim Relations at Merrimack College. On behalf of Merrimack College, I want to thank our cherished colleague, Rabbi Goldstein, for once again hosting Merrimack's annual Kristallnacht Holocaust Memorial here at Temple Emanuel. The college is also deeply grateful to Roberta Braverman, friend, generous supporter, and wise counselor to our center. This year, our gathering takes on heightened significance. In the wake of the tragedy at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, we pledge our continued solidarity with the Jewish communities of the Merrimack Valley. In this sacred place of prayer and community, we remember those who perished amidst the horrors of the Holocaust. We remember the victims of the Tree of Life community. We remember all who have suffered or continue to suffer discrimination, persecution, exclusion, or genocide.
I'm Rabbi Goldstein. I want to welcome all of you to Temple Emanuel. You know, it's ironic that for those who've never been in a synagogue, by the way, we have some seats up front. I doubt anyone will actually want to sit up front, but we do have empty seats up front. You know, we usually, if you notice, that generally after the pews where the folding chairs are, we only use those on the high holy days, on Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah. But ironically, this week twice, today, and also last Friday night when we held an interfaith service in memory of those who perished in Pittsburgh. And I think that we learned from Elie Wiesel that the opposite of hate, the opposite of love, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. So to be aware, to learn, to know, and that's how that we can rid bigotry and intolerance in our community. And so I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here to learn a little bit about Kristallnacht and to hear the account of one who lived through those horrors and has survived to teach us and inform us and enlighten us. We begin our service in remembrance of the Holocaust in silence. We surround our community of prayer and worship with silence in preparation for receiving the presence of God. Silence is not just the absence of words and noise, it's a fullness of anticipation. It's a door opening before prayer toward the realm of the spirit and the heart. Silence is the beginning of a reckoning of the soul, a prelude to an account of the past, a deeper entrance into the reality of the present, and a stance of hope toward the future. Out of silence and darkness, the creative word of God was spoken. It first took the form of wind, of ruach in Hebrew, God's Spirit hovering over the waters of chaos, calling forth light, life, and plenitude.
The heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw the light was good, and so separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. Then God said, "Let us make human beings in our image, in our likeness, so that we may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over the creatures that move along the ground." So God created human beings in the divine image of God. God created them, male and female, they were created. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground." Then God said, "I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. And to all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds in the sky, and all the creatures that move on the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food." And it was so. God saw all creation, and it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. By the seventh day, God had finished the work of creation. So on the seventh day, God rested from the work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it God rested from all the work of creating that God had done.
But there can be another type of silence and another kind of ruach, of wind. At a time of horror in the middle of the 20th century, the silence of the world made possible the monstrous crime of genocide, the attempted murder of a whole people for no other reason that they were a particular type of people, a people called by God, the chosen people, the Jews. On the night of November 9th, 1938, and into the early morning hours of November 10th, the dark silence was broken by the sound of shattering glass. On this night of shattered glass, of Kristallnacht, Nazis smashed the windows of Jewish-owned stores, buildings, and synagogues throughout Germany and Austria. At least 91 Jews were killed in the attacks, and a further 30,000 arrested and incarcerated in concentration camps. Jewish homes, hospitals, and schools were ransacked as the attackers demolished buildings with sledgehammers. Over 1,000 synagogues were burned, and over 7,000 Jewish businesses destroyed or damaged. In the heart of civilized Europe, aided by the silent acquiescence of so many of the nations and peoples of the world, a wind of abomination and racial hostility, a wind of evil shattered the fragile armistice and whipped a continent into a frenzy of senseless killing. In Hebrew, this destruction event, the Nazi murder of 2/3 of European Jewry, is likened to the Shoah of the biblical text, a devastating, diabolic wind that scours the earth of all life, leaving only darkness, death, and chaos in its wake. Creation is unmade. Eli, Eli.
Eli, 6 million Jewish men and women, 1 million children among them, taken by other human beings to die in gas and fire, nameless and graveless. Their ashes are spread across a continent that had itself become a graveyard. Another 5 million Poles, Russians, and other Slavic people, together with Roma, also lost their lives as victims of the diabolical Nazi efficient technology of death. Martin Niemöller, a German Christian pastor, spent 7 years in a concentration camp. He wrote, "First, they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me."
The sacred silence of prayer and meditation can be replaced by the sacrilegious silence of indifference, the cautious silence of fear, the cold silence of hatred, the cynical silence of exclusion and persecution. Elie Wiesel spoke of this destructive kind of silence in his acceptance speech for the 1986 Nobel Peace Prize, and I quote, "And then I explained to him how naive we were, that the world did know and remains silent. And that is why I swore never to be silent whenever and wherever human beings endure suffering and humiliation. We must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. And sometimes we must interfere. When human lives are in danger, when human dignity is in jeopardy, national borders and sensitivities become irrelevant. Wherever men or women are persecuted because of their race, religion, or political views, that place must, at that moment, become the center of the universe." During the singing of Anima Amin, we will light 6 candles to remember the 6 million Jews who died during the genocide of the Shoah, the Holocaust. We will also light another 5 candles to remember the other victims of the Nazis. And finally, we will light 1 more candle to remember those people around the world who even today are excluded and persecuted, tortured, and killed, only for the reason that they are members of a group that others find objectionable, that others fear or hate, that others want to eradicate. Anima Amin, as the candles are lit.
Our song, Ani Ma Amin, is an ancient Hebrew affirmation of faith. This text, which is centuries old, can be interpreted as follows. I believe in God and a greater truth, and in things greater than this world, in spite of all that has happened. I believe that the Messiah will come, and he will find me waiting. No matter how long he tarries, no matter how long he delays his coming, I will continue to believe. No matter what the future holds, I believe. The song has had a rich history in the heart of Israel. It gained its greatest significance, however, during the Holocaust. Thousands of Jews entered the gas chambers singing this very song, proclaiming allegiance to God until their last breath. Eyewitness accounts tell us that the music would decrescendo to silence only as the gas choked the singers. No matter how long he tarries, he will find me waiting. Today we sing Ani Ma Amin out of respect for the faith of which so many millions of people died.
Before we introduce our speaker, there are those in this room who are survivors or children of survivors. And I'd like to ask them if you would just rise for just a moment so people can see the real faces of those whose parents or grandparents lived through the experience of the Shoah. We need to hear their stories. We need to hear their witness so that we can understand the depth of their suffering, but the importance also for us never to become indifferent. I'd like now to invite our speaker, Mrs. Finder, if you would come forward.
Good evening, can you all hear me? You know, when in 1939, I was 9 years old, I did not know anything about the broken glasses, about the Kristallnacht. My parents didn't want to tell me. I was too young to understand. Being here tonight, seeing all of you remembering, makes a huge difference in my life. Finally, people do remember when it started. Because in 1938, when it started, the world was silent. Maybe if they spoke up, there would not be 1939. Maybe there would not have been a Holocaust. I was born in Krakow, Poland. I'm an only child, and my families were very patriotic. Both my parents had a lot of siblings, and they loved being in Poland. I loved Krakow. I loved going to school there. I loved having friends. Life was wonderful until September 1939, when Germany invaded Poland, marched into Krakow, and immediately started to deal with the so-called Jewish questions. So overnight, from being a little girl, I became the enemy of the state, just because my crime was that I was Jewish. And the Germans, whom I always thought of as very cultured people, I imagine they were just like all of us. They were judges and doctors and plumbers. They were husbands and fathers and sons and brothers. They were just like people like us. My father always said, don't worry. Don't worry, it's not going to last long, because when the world will hear what's happening, they will come and help us. But the world did not come to help us. And the Germans immediately took all our civil rights away, so that overnight, people lost their businesses, our bank accounts were closed. Of course, we were not allowed to go to the synagogues. The synagogues were burned or turned into staples. There was nothing we could have done, because we expected help and change to come for better the next day. But the next day brought more and more murdering, taking Jewish people away, and telling us that we were not going to be allowed to remain in Krakow. We were going to go into the ghetto. In the meantime, anybody under 12 and anybody over 55 would not receive a permit to remain in Krakow. An awful lot of people were taken away. We were told those people would go to the farms to help the farmer grow food for the German army. But we never heard from them again. We didn't know what was happening. My parents and I and most of my uncles were able to get a permit to remain in Krakow and go into the ghetto. The ghetto was just a small place across the river from the big city where we lived. And the ghetto was built around maybe 10 blocks. There were maybe 3,000 people living there before the war. There were 250,000 people living in Krakow at that time. About 60,000 were Jews. By the time the ghetto was ready, there was only maybe just 15,000 left. And I remember that we were allowed to take very few things with us, because we were going to go into places that we would share with other families in a small room. And I remember packing up a small suitcase, and my father was allowed to take a pushcart. And we put some pots and pans and blankets, and we left. We had to leave the home where we lived for over 10 years, where we were happy, where we felt safe. I remember walking down the street away from my house and looking back at my friends, my neighbors. Nobody was looking at us. Nobody wanted to say goodbye. It was like we didn't exist. And I remember walking the streets and young people standing there and throwing stones at us, and yelling and screaming, "Goodbye, Jews, don't ever come back." Where does such hate come from? Just because we were Jews? Because my uncles fought for the liberation for the independence of Poland. It was like the whole world became deaf and dumb, and nobody cared, nobody saw us. Neighbors, friends, nobody saw us. And my father said, don't worry, we'll be okay. We had to get permits. We got a small apartment that we shared with 6 other people, and we went to work. We were slaves, but we felt safe because we were working for free. We were working in different workshops in the ghetto, and we thought we would be safe, but we were not, because the guards, the Nazis, they came into ghetto every morning, every night, every noon, just walking around, shooting people or invading homes and taking people away. Less and less people remained. One day, my father was arrested, was taken away. Another day, my grandparents were taken away. I was hiding with my grandparents. There was a huge, huge mountain of dirt in the backyard of the building where we lived. And we saw my mother actually help us to crawl into like a tunnel. And we could hear the soldiers come in, running up and down the stairs, shooting again, and we were afraid to move. We felt that the earth was shaking from all the soldiers running back and forth. Finally, they left. And slowly, after a while, my mom came and helped us get out. And we stood there trying to clean up when 2 more guards came into the building and saw us and took my grandparents away. And we still thought that help would come, but help did not come. We were told that the ghetto would be liquidated, and we're going into concentration camp Plaszów. And the commander of the camp was Amon Get, who came from Vienna. And we thought, well, from Vienna, he's going to be a very kind person, because after all, the Viennese people were known for its culture. But Amon Get was a monster. He was the most inhuman human being that ever existed. The camp was built on 3 Jewish cemeteries. So you can imagine what happened when the ground is leveled. From the tombstones, we had to break up the tombstones, try to build a road. Impossible. For Amon Get, walking around and watching the people work, he enjoyed shooting innocent people. He walked around with huge dogs, and the dogs were trained to kill people. The time came when we had to leave the ghetto when Plaszów was ready. And I remember I had my little cousin Jenny with us. She was 5 years old. Her parents were taken away. How she got to be with us, my father was still with us at that time. And she was always hiding. All the little kids in the ghetto had to be hiding. And I remember I tried to take her with me, but they wouldn't let me. All the children, they said, would have to be in the orphan's home. I was happy. She would be in a home, actually a building with other children, and the nuns will take care of her. I remember walking out of the ghetto, and as I walked with the group of the people that I work with, I realized that some of them, in their backpack, they were carrying their little children, babies, who were drugged, and those were the people who were lucky enough to have some Catholic friends, those we called the righteous Gentiles. And those people risked their lives to save a Jewish child or a Jewish family. They were in danger, not just of the Gestapo, but of the neighbor. Because if the neighbor suspected that they were hiding a Jewish family, they would tell on them. And I remember as soon as we left the camp, the ghetto, walking to the camp, we heard shots. We had no idea where the shots came from until we realized the shots were coming from the ghetto. On that day, March 13, 1941, over 3,000 children and elderly people were killed, murdered in the Krakow ghetto. Some people were sent away to Auschwitz and other camps. And I remember walking into Plaszów, into the concentration camp, where it seems like there were hundreds and hundreds of barracks, all behind barbed wires, what it seems like hundreds and hundreds of guards. We walked into one of the barracks we were assigned to. There were no bunk beds, they were like shelves. Everybody would work because all the businesses, all the workshops that were in the ghetto moved into Plaszów. And so every morning and every night, we had to gather for the upper Platz. It was a huge meadow where we were counted again and again and again. And we were constantly exposed every morning and every night for Amon Get, beating people, shooting people, hanging people, or having the dogs attack people. And yet the world was silent. Nobody knew, nobody hoped. My mom and I were very lucky because we heard about Oskar Schindler. Oskar Schindler, and I'm sure you all have seen the movie, and I want to tell you that everything in that movie is true. Oskar Schindler came over to Krakow because he was a very ambitious young man. He wanted to make money. Before the war, he worked with his father to sell farm equipment, and he came to Krakow quite often. And so he bought a factory that belonged to a Jewish person. Part of the factory was making pots and pans. The other part was making ammunition. Oskar Schindler was very friendly. He became very friendly with some of the generals and some of the politicians. He bribed them. He bought them all kinds of things. And therefore, he was able to hire more and more Jewish workers. For Oskar Schindler, the Jewish workers were going to help him become rich. Oskar Schindler looked at us as human beings, where the German propaganda and all the Germans strongly believed that the Jewish people were inhuman, that we were worse than rats. How could people become so low? How could millions of people follow one person, Adolf Hitler? Adolf Hitler, who wanted to have an Aryan race, everybody blonde and blue-eyed. And I look at pictures of Adolf Hitler, and to me, he's more Jewish than anybody I ever knew. So how could he inspire millions and millions of people to commit such horrible murders? My mom and I, we were so lucky when Oskar Schindler demanded more people to come and work for him, and my mom and I were chosen to be one of those. If it was not for Oskar Schindler, I wouldn't be here. I survived because of Oskar Schindler. And Oskar Schindler had is teaching us that there is always something one can do. When people stood by and said, there is nothing I can do, that was a lie. Oskar Schindler had shown that there is always something you can do. Right now, our world is very shaking. And that's why the survivors and the liberators are beginning to talk about the Holocaust much more than we ever did before. In the beginning, nobody really wanted to hear. And we now feel that we should pass the torch of memory to the younger generation. Those of you who will have the power to change the world, to get rid of the hate. After all, It's easy to do. It's much easier to be nice than to hate. I know there is a lot of bullying around in schools nowadays. Something didn't happen when I went to school, or it did. I just didn't realize that when I went to school, I was also never friendly with anybody who wasn't Jewish, because Polish people were very anti-Semitic. I feel that the new generation is our future. You're going to grow up, you're going to be able to vote, you're going to be able to change the world so that your children and your grandchildren will not care what color you are. It was John F. Kennedy who had said, whether you are black or white or yellow, when you cut a finger, our blood is red. It doesn't matter what religion you are. I'm very proud to be here today because I know that in this temple it doesn't matter what color you are and what religion you are. It's a private thing. It doesn't matter. We have to reach out to each other and respect each other and make sure that Holocaust will never happen again. That's why we must remember, because there's still so much genocide. And one of the things that I'm grateful for Steven Spielberg is for making that movie. Because with Steven Spielberg making the movie, the whole world heard about the Holocaust. There were other movies made about the Holocaust, but nobody went to see it except the survivors. Because it was Steven Spielberg that made the movie, everybody wanted to see it. And it was like the wall of silence came down. All of a sudden, it was allowed to talk about the Holocaust, and it was also allowed for the liberators to talk about what they had seen. Most of them never talked before. I hope that all of the young people who are here tonight will remember that you heard from an eyewitness, and now you are going to become an eyewitness, because there are fewer and fewer of us left. So you have to remember what had happened when the world decided to hate everyone. Our people decided that everything bad that happened is because of the Jews. In Germany, 1% of people were Jewish. However, everything bad that happened was blamed on the Jews. I have hope, and I know I won't be around anymore for that, but I know that you will make a huge difference in the years to come for you and your family. Thank you.
The White Rose Society was a nonviolent intellectual resistance group in Nazi Germany, consisting of students from the University of Munich and their philosophy professor. The group became known for an anonymous leaflet and graffiti campaign lasting from June 1942 until February 1943 that called for the active opposition to dictator Adolf Hitler's regime. The leaders and others were executed for their resistance. And today, the members of the White Rose are honored in Germany among its greatest heroes since they opposed the Third Reich in the face of almost certain death. I now invite members of the assembly to bring forth a rose and place it on the table here at the front. Each rose symbolizes a group of persons who have suffered or who continue to suffer exclusion or persecution or death simply because they are members of that group. In addition to the Holocaust, we remember genocides in Armenia, Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia, Darfur, and the displacement and killing of Native American peoples. And we invite everyone who wishes to write the name of a group of persons persecuted in today's world just because they are members of that group. Come forward and place the paper with the group's name among white roses, and a final rose will symbolize those peoples. And so too do we remember all the victims of terror and the brutal and senseless killing that seems so pervasive in our culture.
Gracious power, so wonderfully sheltered, and confidently waiting come what may. We know that God is with us night and morning, and never fails to greet us each new day. Yet is this heart by its old foe tormented? Still evil days bring burdens hard to bear. Oh, give our frightened souls the sure salvation, for which, O Lord, you taught us to prepare. And when this cup you give is filled to brimming, with bitter suffering hard to understand, we take it thankfully and without trembling. Wilt of so good and so beloved a hand.
They lived in numberless towns and villages, and in too many of them they endured cruel suffering. Some were forgotten, others are sealed in memory, but all of them represent a wound that does not heal. 100 generations, victims and martyrs, and their blood cries out from the earth. In so many places like Dachau, Babi Yar, Auschwitz, Buchenwald. What can we say? What can we do? How bear the unbearable or accept what life has brought to so many? All who are born must die, but how shall we compare the slow passage of time with the callous slaughter of the innocent cut off before their time? Some lived with faith, not all, but many. And surely many died with faith in God, in life, in the goodness that even flames cannot destroy. And may we find a way to the strength of that faith, that trust, that sure sense that life and soul endure beyond even the body's death. They have left their lives to us. Let a million prayers rise whenever people of good will gather, and let a million candles glow against the darkness of those unfinished lives. The Mourner's Kaddish, which you can find in your pamphlet, it's a prayer not of death. We say it in memory of our dead, but it's a prayer about life, an affirmation of life. And as we say these sacred words in Aramaic, the language that Jesus spoke, actually, that Jewish man that began the faith that many of you are part of, this prayer, as I said, is an affirmation of life. It's a reminder that we must become the vessels through which God's Spirit lives and the spirit of all who perished. We will live for them. We will honor their memory by the deeds that we commit. When we fight for justice, when we fight against intolerance and bigotry, their spirit lives. And that's what the Kaddish is all about. We rise together. Yitgadal, Yitgadash Meraba, V'yalma divrach yirtei v'yamlich malchutei, V'chai chon uv'yomei chon uv'chai dechol Beit Yisrael, V'agalau bizman kariv imru, Amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevorach le'olam olmei omaya, Yitborach v'yishtabach v'yitpo'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei dekucha brichu, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran bi'alma v'imru, Amen. Yehei shalomar rabba min shmaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. Oseh shalom bimramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. We read responsively. Magnified and sanctified is the name of God in the world by will created. May God's governance govern in your lifetime and in your days and in the life of the family Israel, in the whole world speedily and in a time come near. And we all say, we praise the name of God, unceasing, eternally turning to eternity. May it be blessed and acclaimed, and may it be gloried and adorned and hailed. And may it be adored and raised and praised. The name, the holy name, blessed be, far beyond any blessings and hymns, praises and solace uttered in this world. And we all say, may there be abundant peace from heaven and life upon us and all Israel and on the entire world. And we all say, may the maker of peace above continue to make peace upon us and on all Israel and on the entire world wherein we dwell. And we all say, please be seated.
In the midst of horror and hatred against the silence of persecution and genocide, we still hear voices of protest and praise. Jewish voices were heard reciting prayers and biblical texts on the trains to the concentration camps, at the doors of death chambers, in hiding, in fighting the enemy, manifesting grief, hope, despair, trust in God, faith. On the wall of a cellar in Cologne, Germany, where Jews hid from the Nazis, these words were written: I believe in the sun, even when it is not shining. I believe in love, even when feeling it not. I believe in God, even when God is silent.
So in the face of today's outbreaks of prejudice and hatred and persecution and genocide, I ask you, each of you in this room tonight, to commit yourself to speak out, to take action in prudent and effective ways, as Mrs. Finder implored us in her moving remarks. It is in our hands, in your hands. Your voice will summon others. Your action will call them to task. God will be your companion and your witness. Let us stand as we can and together proclaim. And together, I believe that every human life is sacred. I pledge to safeguard the life and dignity of each and every person, and to help protect the rights that are theirs by virtue of their being in the image of God. I commit myself to work actively for a world of greater respect among persons, broader care for the environment, and just distribution of resources. I choose to live my life with a commitment to justice and peace across borders of difference and division. I promise to confront discrimination or persecution, to challenge prejudice in all its forms, and to give my wholehearted support and companionship to those who struggle for respect and recognition as equal members of the human family. And now let us pray before we leave this place. O Holy One, most compassionate, you call us to share in your fierce love for each and every person. Enlighten our minds to know how to respond to injustice. Strengthen our wills to do what is right. And with the survivors of the Shoah, we join our voices and say, never again. May the memory of those who have perished endure in our commitment to justice and peace. May their memory be a blessing on all humanity, now and forever. And we invoke the threefold benediction that is common to our traditions. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmarecha. May God bless you and watch over you. Ye'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. May God cause his countenance to shine upon you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God lift up his face unto you, unto all of us, and bless us with peace. Peace in our home, peace in our hearts. And please, God, may there be peace in our world. And let us together say, Amen. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. A little, but not really. I practiced with Emily before.
So you should meet.
use of